What's up, everyone? You're tuned in to the Sin Bin podcast with Alec Pecano on Monday, April 14th. On today's show, we are going to look ahead at the final two games of the season for the Lightning, talk about everything else going on in the NHL, and I'm going to give you a couple playoff preview predictions for the playoffs, because we do already know some of the matchups for the playoffs, and talk about a lot more. But let's get right into it. First of all, before I start with the Lightning, I want to give my congratulations to two guys. One of them used to play for the Lightning. He helped us win back-to-back Stanley Cups, and that would be the big rig, Pat Maroon. Congratulations, Patrick Maroon, on a wonderful hockey career, and hope you have fun in retirement. I'm happy for you that you won three total Stanley Cups, two with the Lightning and one with your hometown team, the St. Louis Blues. And hopefully the Lightning maybe retire your jersey number. And also thank you for all the memories you gave me as a Lightning fan when you played for the Lightning. And again, I hope you enjoy retirement. And the other one is Alec Martinez. Played for the LA Kings for a long time, helped them win a Stanley Cup. He never played for the Lightning, but still, utmost respect for you, Mr. Martinez. Thank you for everything you did for the hockey community. Not just, and this is coming from a Lightning fan, thank you for everything you did for the hockey community in Los Angeles and the entire NHL. Your presence will be missed on the ice and in the media. I can see both of these. I can see Maroon and Martinez becoming analysts. Maybe Maroon for like either St. Louis or the Lightning, and then Alec Martinez, probably LA, maybe Chicago, if they want to do that. Because, of course, yes, they have a family, so family comes first before anything else. And on to the Lightning. They have two more games left in the regular season. They have a nationally televised game on Tuesday, which is tomorrow night, against, let's go here and see who they play. We are still here. The Lightning's last two games are Tuesday versus the Florida Panthers and Thursday at the Rangers, and then they start the first round of the playoffs. And the Lightning, for me, the way the Lightning, I think the Lightning can make a deep playoff run. And the way they do that is if they stay healthy and they don't have a lot of injuries, which they have a big injury right now in Oliver Bjorkstrand, who is week to week right before the playoffs start. They did call up Connor Geekie. They did recall Connor Geekie from the Syracuse Crunch. And he scored a goal in his return to the NHL last night. The Lightning ended up winning last night 7-4 against the Buffalo Sabres. Thank goodness, because as most of you know, the Buffalo Sabres, and I will go more in depth about this in a second, but they don't know how to correctly tank. And if you need the definition of tanking is when you decide, oh, we're going to tank, but we're not going to do it the correct way. We're going to do it the opposite way, which is winning, which going into last night, the Sabres and I'm talking about it right now. The Sabres had won 7, get this, 7 of their last 10 games. And look, and to me, that's befuddling because they can't make the playoffs. There's no way. They have the least amount of points you can have, and they're already eliminated. And I want to know, do we have any Buffalo Sabres fans in here? In the comments of this video, let me know who your favorite NHL team is. I'm a Lightning fan and a Blue Jackets fan, and we will get to the Blue Jackets in a little bit. But let me finish up with the Sabres, and then I'll circle back around to the Lightning. Buffalo fans, I really feel terrible for you because you have had horrible luck, whether it be drafting, trading for players. Look at Dylan Cousins. You drafted Dylan Cousins, and then you just traded him at the deadline. And look what he's doing in Ottawa. He's going to help. Ottawa's already clinched a playoff spot. There's 2 teams in the Eastern Conference fighting for one playoff spot. And it's going to probably come down to the last game of the season for both teams. But back to the Lightning. The Lightning, and I'm a diehard Lightning fan. In the offseason, we traded Mikhail Sergachev, and we let Steven Stamkos walk and go to Nashville. And there were Lightning fans out there like, oh, why are the Lightning getting rid of Stamkos? Why are the Lightning getting rid of Sergachev? Well, for one, the reason they got rid of Sergachev is because his new contract was about to kick in, and they would have had to pay him a lot of guaranteed money. And they probably wouldn't. They didn't want to do that. And as you can see, it's worked out for both teams. The Lightning got J.J. Moser and Connor Geekie. And J.J. Moser has been really good in his short time with the Lightning. And Connor Geekie has 2. I mean, both of them are technically rookies. Moser didn't really play last year for Utah/Arizona. And Connor Geekie was in juniors last year. So I see a path to Connor Geekie getting regular ice time in the playoffs as long as these last 2 games go really well for him. Because we have no idea what the update on Oliver Bjorkstrand is after last night. We just know he is day to day, week to week with an injury. And the other guy that I've been vividly surprised with for the Lightning this year is Emil Lilleberg. We knew Emil was good last year in his time with the Lightning. But did we know he was going to take a step up this year? I know he's playing more regularly now, even with guys like Darren Radish stepping up, Victor Hedman playing up to his usual self, Ryan McDonagh back with the Lightning, which that was another shocking move the Lightning made, was reacquiring Ryan McDonagh in the offseason. I'm like, once they traded him the first time, I'm like, okay, we're probably done with McDonagh's probably never coming back. And Julien Brisebois does it again. He pulls off a trade. We got McDonagh for a couple draft picks, basically. And the Lightning, I feel like they're going to make a deep cup run regardless of who they play. In the Eastern Conference, the only team that I could say firmly, there's only 2 teams that firmly scare me, and one of them might actually it's going to come down to, like I said, the last week of the season to see who gets that second wild card in the East. Right now, Ottawa's locked into the first wild card, and we we'll see who ends up getting that second wild card between Montreal and Columbus. Columbus is only 3 points back of that last wild card. Can Columbus get the last wild card spot? I think so. They just need Montreal to lose their last 2 games, and they win their last 2 games, which would put them at 89 points and probably put them in the playoffs over Montreal. And Montreal would fall out, which Montreal fans, I wouldn't be mad. You had a really good season if you do miss the playoffs. But the one team we need to talk about in all this is the Florida Panthers. And Florida Panther fans, I want to hear your opinion in the comments of this episode. Are y'all actually tanking to get a wild card spot so you could play Toronto in the first round instead of having to play the Lightning? I want your brutally honest opinion, because that's all I've heard the last 2 weeks is, the Panthers are tanking for a wild card spot so they don't have to play either Tampa Bay or Toronto in the first round. Is this true, Florida Panther fans? Please, I would love to know what your stance is on that. Are y'all tanking to get to play somebody else in the first round? Regardless of where you finish. If you finish third, it's probably going to be the Lightning. If the Lightning went out and Toronto went out. If Toronto loses their last 2 games and the Lightning win their last 2 games, which Florida, tomorrow night, that Panthers game for the Lightning, that's nationally televised, and it's the biggest game of the year for the Lightning. Because if the Lightning win and somehow Toronto loses, the Lightning are at 98 points. I believe, no. They're at 100 because they got a point on Thursday night. Then they got 2 points last night. So if they get 2 points tomorrow night, they could jump into first place as long as Toronto loses their game. And NHL fans and Leafs fans, I want to know, who would you rather play in the first round? Ottawa or Florida? Because if Florida does tank, they would get Toronto in the first round. If Toronto ends up finishing in first in the Atlantic. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to right now pull up the standings, and I will share my screen once I do, because there's some stuff I'm going to talk about with the standings in terms of the playoffs and in terms of the draft, because I really want to get into that. So go here. Present, share screen. So the wild card right now, as you know, the top 3 teams. Okay, so the Lightning, they would have to win out. And Toronto would have to lose. Because if they finish with, the only way the Lightning can get the first place in the division is, they might not be able to. Lightning are probably going to finish second. So the Atlantic division looks like Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida. And then it's Washington, Carolina, New Jersey. The wild card right now. And this is what I'm talking about. Columbus has a slight chance. They've won 4 in a row. If you look at this, they might take overtime regulation wins as well. But if I'm looking at tiebreakers and somehow Montreal loses their last 2 games and Columbus wins, Columbus could jump them and make the playoffs. And who would Columbus have to play in the first round? It's going to be Carolina and New Jersey. So Washington is either going to play Montreal or Columbus. And if they have to play Columbus, that is a dangerous Columbus team. Everybody thought they were going to take a step forward this year. And I'm talking about Columbus. Everybody expected the Blue Jackets to take a step forward. But nobody expected the Blue Jackets to be this close to a playoff spot with 2 games left in the regular season. If Columbus somehow can win out and Montreal loses their last 2 games, Columbus can sneak into the playoffs. And we've seen what happens. Go back to 2019, first round, Blue Jackets, Lightning. What happened? The Blue Jackets swept and upset the Lightning in 4 games. Now, if Montreal wins out and Columbus wins out, Montreal's probably making the playoffs. Then again, if I'm Washington, I still don't want Montreal because they're young and they could make a lengthy run if they win if they beat Washington somehow. Now, do I think they beat Washington? Maybe. I'd feel more confident about a team like the Blue Jackets beating Washington than I would about Montreal beating Washington. Now we look at the West. And yes, we do got a couple matchups that are confirmed. LA and Edmonton are facing each other again in the first round. And we've seen this. We've seen these 2 teams match up in the playoffs the last 3 years, from my knowledge. And I think that this is the year that I believe Edmonton will lose to LA in the playoffs. I think this is LA's year. Quentin Byfield stepped up. Brant Clark has looked amazing in the uptick at ice time he got at the beginning of the year and now. And then the other one is Dallas and Colorado. That's the other first round matchup we have confirmed in the West. And it's the Mikko Rantanen Bowl. Mikko Rantanen used to play for Colorado. Now he plays for Dallas. This series, I can see Dallas beating Colorado in 7 games. In Edmonton and LA, I can see LA winning in 6. Now the Western Conference, the wild card is a mess. You got 3 teams for 2 wild card spots. Minnesota, St. Louis, and Calgary. Right now, Minnesota and St. Louis are at the top of the wild card with 9. Minnesota's got 95 points. St. Louis has got 94. And the Blues, if the Blues win out, they're going to get, what is the chance? Very slim. Because they're both Central Division. So, yeah. So, Minnesota, if they lose their last 2 games somehow, and St. Louis Because we know notoriously they're the St. Louis Blues, and they don't lose. If St. Louis wins their last 2 games, they can get that top wild card spot. And chances are it would be Vegas, St. Louis, Minnesota, Winnipeg. Or it could flip. If St. Louis loses their last 2 games and Minnesota wins out, it becomes Minnesota and Vegas and St. Louis, Winnipeg. Which, to tell you, to be fair here, we should know by Thursday at the latest every single playoff matchup starting going into next week. Now we're going to jump to the other side of the spectrum, the teams that are eliminated. Who do I think? We're going to go all the way up because I'm going to change this to league. So the bottom teams. So you got San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Boston, Philly, Seattle, Buffalo, Anaheim, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Rangers, Islanders, Utah, Vancouver, and that's it. Who do I think has the best chance of getting the first overall pick? It's probably going to be San Jose. And do they need a Gavin McKenna? Because if you look at, let's go look at regulation wins. San Jose has 14. They have 14 regulation wins. Regulation overtime wins, 18. Which means they're the lowest here. And I think that signals to me that they're going to have the best opportunity to get the first overall pick. But as we've seen in recent years, there's teams that are lower down on the totem pole when the draft lottery comes out that can jump other teams and get that first overall pick. And I'm going to give you 3 teams I think that could end up being the ones that jump somebody else and end up getting the first overall pick. Number 3, the Nashville Predators. The Predators had a horrendous season this year. They went out and they spent money. They signed Brady Shea. They signed Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. They made 3 big signings. And none of them really worked. As you can see where they are in the standings. They're 30th in the NHL standings. If that doesn't tell you how this season's gone for Nashville, I don't know what does. And the people are saying, let's get the narrative out of the way that Steven Stamkos is washed. He's not. He's one of the greatest goal scorers in recent history. And at the end of this segment, I'm going to congratulate somebody that broke Wayne Gretzky's goal record. Number 2 team that could jump up and get the first overall pick is the Anaheim Ducks. Now, I do like the young core that the Ducks are kind of creating here. But to say that, the Ducks don't need another top 5 pick. Yes, they do. They got a lot of good young players, and they could add a Gavin McKenna and Matthew Schaefer. Somebody like that, or somebody from the college ranks at number 1. So that's my number 2 team. Number 3, and this is probably the least likely. It is a team that was trying to make the playoffs for a long time this year. And then all of a sudden now they decided, even though we're winning, we're out of the playoffs. It is the Pittsburgh Penguins. That core in Pittsburgh is not getting any younger with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, Raquel. They do have some young guys that are coming up. Jari is another one that's not getting any younger. I think Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh Penguins fans in the comments of this episode of the podcast, I want to know your humble opinion. And I want to know what you think about what I'm about to say. I think it is time for y'all to go into a full-on rebuild. Yes, I said it, full-on rebuild. And I think if you get the first overall pick, and you had a Matthew Schaefer or a Gavin McKenna or a James Higgins, that you can win more games next year and be competitive. And I'm not saying I would like to see a full rebuild from Pittsburgh, but I don't think that's going to happen. Because I feel like what you're going to do, because it's Kyle Dubas. Kyle Dubas is your GM. And I feel like Kyle Dubas is going to say, look, we're not going to go into full rebuild. We're going to go into retool, trade off some of the older guys, bring in more younger guys. And if you do that, maybe you're back in the playoffs next year. So that's number 3. So Nashville was number 1, Anaheim 2, Pittsburgh 3. Number 4, and this is the least likely out of all 4 of these teams to jump up and get the number 1 pick. And I could be completely wrong. They could actually do it. It is the Boston Bruins. They've been playing a lot of younger guys down the stretch. And I can see an avenue where the Bruins end up winning the draft lottery and get the first overall pick. And I know some Bruins fans, and they've told me they're scared for the draft because Don Sweeney apparently does not know how to draft. And I mean, as a Lightning fan, I kind of agree with them, but at the same time, cut him some slack. That's what people thought of Julian Breezeball when the Lightning first hired him. And maybe Don Sweeney can turn it around. And if the Bruins get the number 1 pick, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to add Matthew Schaefer. Now, here's a couple teams that don't need the first overall pick. And that would be Vancouver, because you've got Elias Pettersson, you've got Brock Besser. But Besser is going to be a free agent. Does Vancouver re-sign him? If they do, how much money are they going to give him? Or do they let him go to the open market? And the other one is Detroit. I don't think the Red Wings, and Red Wings fans are not happy. They say the Yzer plan is failing. I disagree. I was the same way when Yzerman came to the Lightning and was our GM. I didn't want to follow the Yzer plan, and I did. And look what it got the Lightning. It got the Lightning a Stanley Cup, 2 of them, before Yzerman left and went to Detroit. So, Red Wings fans, be patient. Your time is coming to be back in the playoffs. And the other thing, congratulations, Alexander Ovechkin, on breaking Wayne Gretzky's goal record for his career at 895 goals. Congratulations, Ovi. And ladies and to everybody that watches the podcast, if you want to hear the audio version only of this podcast, the podcast will be up on Spotify within the next couple of days. So be sure to watch the podcast and give it a 5-star rating on Spotify. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of the Sin Bin Podcast with your host, Alec Pecano. I will be back again tomorrow with another episode of the Dugout Discussions podcast with my co-host Bradley Walker at 5:45. And tomorrow's tomorrow's Dugout Discussions podcast is it's going to be a fun one. Bradley and I are ranking our top 50 prospects in a tier list for baseball. But that's going to wrap up the Sin Bin podcast today, and much more on the Dugout Discussion podcast as well tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday.